Thank you, everyone, for joining us. If you can hear us on the other end, please, let us know. We're going to get started here in a minute. We're in here just a minute early, and we'll do introductions here in just one moment. All right. Give it just one more minute here.
Usually we have Paul telling jokes at the start of this, Mark and Bob. So I don't know if you guys are ready for one of Paul's jokes.
They're usually just jokes for Ron, but what does a data analyst put in their hair, right, Ron?
The hair again, eh?
Some product.
Some product. That's great.
Why don't whales sweat? No armpits.
Very good. We got some.
I just noticed and took out from the bottom of my bookshelf the first Mark Sanborn book that I ever read.
Oh wow, fantastic!
That's collectible.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think yours and mine may be the only two surviving copies.
I do have a couple of your books back here. So you got Go Giver, Fred Factor, and I just started reading the Encore Effect. So
okay.
That was a great book. Just picked that one up recently, so we've been reading through the Fred Factor. All right, well, I'll go ahead and do a quick intro. I know we have some people in the room here, and then I'm going to kick it over to Ron, who's going to do introductions, and we'll go from there. So my name's Paul Barnhurst. Today I have with me Ron, Bob, and Mark. And we have all of you out there on LinkedIn. We're really excited to have you today. We're grateful Mark and Bob carved out a few minutes for us. And I'm going to give Ron just a quick opportunity to tell a little bit of a backstory here, and then we'll do introductions of our guests. And we have a few questions from them, and we'll just go from there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. And Bob, Mark, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time. And both Paul and myself have embarked on this journey to start our businesses. And as Paul and myself both know, you need a lot of inspiration, and you need inspiration coming from many different places. And so coincidentally, both of us had read the Go Giver and the Fred Factor, and they've been really instrumental in helping us maintain our day-to-day energy, inspiration, just to keep going, right? And I really admire Paul also on so many levels because he has a massive following and he inspires every day. But the backstory behind that is we both get really inspired by amazing folks like Mark and Bob. So they've been super gracious to join us. I know wherever I travel, I look for Freds, and Mark will explain what that is. And then the go-giving philosophy is just a brilliant philosophy. So we're both super excited. We're going to introduce them, and then we want them to do the majority of the talking. They're amazing folks and really givers, as we talked about. So I'm going to start with Mark. So Mark is a best-selling author, professional speaker, and entrepreneur. He's co-authored or authored 8 books, including The Fred Factor, You Don't Need a Title to Be a Leader, and The Potential Principle. He was just telling us the 20th anniversary of the Fred Factor is coming out, so we're really excited. He served as the president of the National Speakers Association and has received many awards in recognition of this contribution to the speaking industry. One of his training programs reached the #2 spot for best educational videos, and his book really inspires me, right? And I really am so excited to hear what a Fred is and for him to tell you what a Fred is. So over to you, Paul, for Bob.
Yep. All right. So I'll do an introduction of Bob here. Bob Burg is the author of several books, including The Go Giver Sells More, and Endless Referrals. And I'll just, briefly say the concept from The Go Giver really is what led to me starting my business when I used those concepts as I was working with somebody, and it led to one thing to another. And that's kind of how down the road my business started. So I've always really appreciated that book. I recommend it to a lot of people. Bob speaks and inspires audiences. He's spoken to groups up to 16,000 people. The American Management Association named Bob one of the 30 most influential leaders. He's a big advocate, supporter, and defender of the free enterprise system, believing the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people they serve. And as I said, and as Ron mentioned, Bob's book have inspired both of us. We're really big fans of, the Go Giver and just the philosophy behind it.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, fantastic. And one other thing we should mention is this is more than a collared shirt. Both Paul and myself don't usually wear collared shirts, and I've even put on a blazer. So that's a really special occasion for both of you guys. We really appreciate you being on. I'm going to start with you, Mark. And I've referred to the Fred factor. So tell us what a Fred is, and just give us the background behind that philosophy. I think that's super powerful.
Sure. Well, first of all, great to be with you both. And this is such a big deal. Bob's actually wearing trousers. So you guys are wearing collared shirts. And so we're all dressed up today. I think Bob and I should have gotten together a long time ago and wrote Fred Goes and Gives. That would have been a great book for a collaborative effort. You know, the Fred Factor came out in 2004, but interestingly, I met Fred back in 1988. I had pitched the book for, I don't know, about 10 years and never had a publisher be interested. And then in a turn of circumstance, not worth getting into now, a publisher came to me and said, hey, what about that guy named Fred? So, you know, the book came out in 04, even though the story happened in 88. Fred is still around. He is a retired U.S. postal carrier. And the really essence of the book is that nobody can prevent you from choosing to be extraordinary. Fred had, until he retired, a very simple job, putting mail in the box. And he turned it into artistry. And I think the reason why the book resonated was because it wasn't about Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. It was about you and I, right? We're all ordinary people. Some people achieve extraordinary success, but they're outliers. Really, the goal is to do whatever you do in an extraordinary way. And Fred made delivering the mail artistry. And if he could do it, and this isn't to speak down to delivering the mail, but frankly, if you can take a simple job and do it that well, the rest of us have no excuse in our work. Fred retired a few years ago. We're still in touch with he and his wife, Kathy. And the book's based on 4 principles, which I'll just quickly provide here. The first is that everybody makes a difference. And that's not what we've been told. You know, we grew up being told we could make a difference. And if you can do something, that means you can also choose not to do something. I believe there's no neutrality. You're either adding to or taking away from the experience of others. If you think you're neutral, you're probably interpreted by your colleagues and customers as indifferent. And indifference is really a negative experience to have. So I think the question is, what kind of difference do we make? So the first principle is about choosing whenever you can to make a positive difference. The second is it's all built on relationship. And ironically, all of our clients, when I speak to corporate America, they've been told they need to build better relationships with their team members and with their customers. Unfortunately, they haven't been taught how. We think that it's some kind of natural gifting to know how to build relationships. And I believe we need to be taught. I think we need to be students of relationship building. And so I talk about how Fred was able to do that. The third is frankly my favorite, and that is you can add value to everything you do, and it doesn't have to cost a nickel. If I took 10 ideas from my work over 30, almost 40 years, it would be this. You can replace money with imagination. And, for entrepreneurs especially, the ability to outthink rather than outspend your competition is critical. And Fred created great value with really very few resources other than his imagination. And the fourth point is that you've got to reinvent yourself every day so that life doesn't get stale for you. If you get bored, you bore other people. Boredom is a downward spiral. And so we owe it to ourselves to stay fresh. I'm guessing Bob's heard me say this from the stage. So many people say, well, when it stops being fun, I'm going to get out of the business. I've always said, I'm going to get out of the business before it stops being fun, because I don't want my last audience to go, wow, yeah, he obviously was not having fun anymore. And, we've all been there, right? People that just hung on too long. If you can't if you can't refresh yourself, you've got to reinvent yourself and go to a different pond where you can get as excited as you once were. So those are the 4 principles of the Fred Factor.
Yeah, no, I think there's so many gems there. We could do a whole podcast on that. I'm going to come back to some of the things you talked about, but I love the part about it being a choice, a daily choice. and something we all have. So I absolutely love it, and not sitting on the fence. So Paul, why don't you ask Bob your first question?
I got to before and just Paul, before we even start, I got to say that one of the coolest things about what Mark did with the Fred Factor was he created an entire generation of people in business who now started identifying Freds everywhere they went. Right? Oh, that person's a Fred. That person's a Fred. Oh man, this guy's. And how many of us have given out book, the book to people because this is you. You're a Fred, right? And so that's made quite a mark in American business and in American life. So way to go.
Amazing.
Agree with you, Bob. Everybody can relate to a Fred, right? It's just a everyday person that brought their energy and their effort to magnify what they were doing. And so I love that, how it's just so relatable. So question for you, Bob, can you talk maybe a little bit about just the Go-Giver, how that idea came about, and then the 5 laws of stratospheric success that you talk about in the book?
Sure. Well, the quick story to how it came about is I had a book out years and years ago, back in the 90s, called Endless Referrals: Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. It was basically a how-to book for entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service. They knew it brought wonderful value to people, but they didn't necessarily feel comfortable or confident going into their local communities and building the kinds of relationships where people would want to do business with them directly and or refer them to others. So it sort of equipped them to very confidently build those relationships. The basic premise was that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust, which I've been obnoxiously repeating for the past 35 years or so. And so I always thought, wouldn't it be great to take those principles and turn it into a story? The challenge is I'm not a story writer. I can kind of tell a story from stage, I guess, but that's different than writing a book of fiction. Fortunately, I came across John David Mann, who was the editor-in-chief of a magazine I was writing for, and who had a great reputation even then for being a masterful writer and storyteller. I shared this kind of idea with him. There wasn't really much put together, but the idea, and he said, "Yeah, let's do this. I think we've got something here." And speak of Mark being kind of ignored by the publishers for 10 years. We were turned down by 24 publishers, over the course of a year, before finally the 25th one said, "Yeah, I think you got something there too." So, isn't that funny how that works? But although I think the Chicken Soup for the Soul guys have us a little bit. Didn't they get turned down by like 250 publishing houses or something before and that turned out pretty well for them. So
they did all right for themselves.
Did all right
over 500 million books, I think.
Yeah. So the Go-Giver itself is it's a business parable, and the basic premise of this book is very simple. It's that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. Now, when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way, more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical type of reasons. Not at all. It's actually very, very logical, very rational. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on serving others, discovering what they need, what they want, what they desire. When you can move off yourself, focus on helping other people solve their challenges and problems. When you can move from an I focus to a focus on helping to bring that other person closer to happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to do business with you. They want to tell others about you. They want to be your personal walking ambassador. And that's really what the essence of the Go-Giver is.
Thank you for that, Bob. And I really like the way you said that there it's about serving the customer, not just because, hey, that's a nice thing to do, but also it's how you get to know them. It's how you add value. It's how you solve problems for them, is serving them instead of focusing on how do I make another dollar. The dollar will take care of itself if you focus on the people you're serving.
Yeah. As John David Mann and I say, money is simply an echo of value.
Yes.
Right. It's the thunder, if you will, to value's lightning.
And Paul, if I can interject, one of the things one of the things that makes me crazy about LinkedIn are the mass solicitations. My favorite is when I don't do my due diligence and connect with someone I don't know, and they send me a message that says, "Would you like to write a book?" And I'm thinking, well, you've obviously not even read my bio, or want to learn how to be a speaker.
I was just going to say, asking Mark
That's another
Sanborn,
one.
would you like to know how to be a speaker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, no, I think it connects to that one-on-one, right? Relationship building. And there's a constant theme there. And I was actually speaking to Howard Bihar, ex-president of Starbucks, yesterday.
Yeah.
And so he was very familiar with your books, which is amazing. But it was also around servant leadership, and the outcome, or echo, Bob, to use your words, is the money, right? So it's around doing the right thing, serving people. And I love just that consistent theme there of three people have been very, very successful. And our audience is primarily in finance and accounting, right? So we'd love you to just share, hey, what does that mean for them, right? I love the example of Fred as an example. And then the other piece you're both fantastic at is public speaking. So I'd love your thoughts on, from a finance and accounting perspective, what's the way to be a Fred? And then what's your advice on becoming a confident speaker?
Bob, I'll let you kick it off if you'd like.
So, yeah, sure. Let me take the first one. When we talk about someone who is a service provider and a professional, and one of the things that they don't like to think about themselves is that they're sales professionals, and yet they are. And one of the biggest challenges is how sales is looked at by so many people as something you do to someone, right? I think it was Mark's and my colleague Ron Willingham who was the first one to say sales is not doing something to someone, it's doing something for someone. And when you think of selling as trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need, well, that's not selling. That's called being a con artist, right? So if we look at selling as simply discovering what the other person does want, need, or desire, now we come at it from a totally different viewpoint. The excuse me, the Old English root of the word sell was selan, which meant to give. So when you're selling, you're literally giving. Now, someone might say, well, wait a second, Burg, isn't that just semantics? When you're selling, what are you really giving? Well, I don't think it's semantics at all, because let's say you're in front of someone, you're in the sales conversation, you are selling. So what exactly are you giving? I suggest you're giving them time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and ultimately exquisite value. So I think when we look at our profession and look at sales from that foundational premise, now we can feel very good about what we're doing.
Fantastic.
Well, I want to echo that and just say that in the old days, people would buy from you just because they liked you. Today, they won't buy from you just because they like you, but they won't buy from you if you have a good product and they don't like you. And one of the things that I think, and I serve on the board of a financial services firm, so this is near and dear to my heart, it's about trust. And the way that you create trust, oddly, just crazy, you tell the truth. And one of the ways that you tell the truth is you let people know when your product or service isn't right for them, or you let them know that what they want isn't what they need. There are a lot of ways to tell the truth. Now, the key is, of course, to do it diplomatically. But I don't know who originally said it. I know 30 people that said they originally said it. But my favorite definition of selling is helping people make a decision that's good for them. And if your service, your product, doesn't matter if it's financial services or groceries, aren't the right fit, as soon as you are able to say to the prospect or the customer, this isn't the right fit for you, believe it or not, now they really want to buy from you. They may not want to buy what isn't the right fit, but they now think, holy smokes, this person really does care about me making a good decision. The other thing I would say, because it's ironic how you have these ruminations and then you get on a call and you flash back. This morning, I was thinking about someone I knew in the financial services sector. And when we did business together, he was a hail fellow and we did stuff together. When we stopped doing business together, he wasn't a hail fellow anymore. And I realized that you should like people whether or not they buy from you. You should like people if they don't buy from you. You should really like people if they choose to buy from you. But that relationship should transcend the transaction. Otherwise, you're just a vendor. People say, what's the difference between a vendor and a partner? And the answer is a vendor has someone you share a transaction with. A partner is someone you share a transaction and a relationship with. And here's the funny thing, and I'll just end on this, and that is a lot of people who I've not bought from or who haven't bought from me have created business for each other. I've sent business to people. I said, you know what? I'm not your customer, but I know somebody that is. Or I've been honest with someone who referred me later because they said they knew that I would be a stand-up guy. So I think this idea of, well, I like them as long as they're buying from me, and then when they're not, I move on to the next, is very, very short-sighted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I love that example. And so for both of you, here's how you've influenced me. So when I first got on sales calls, I was just talking a mile a minute. Here's all the things I do. I want to, like, it was just like, let me get off the Zoom call as soon as possible. That's what the other person was thinking. And I switched to listening, asking questions. And actually, Mark, to use your last point, there's one CFO who basically was telling me exactly what I teach. And I literally authentically said, you've got it covered. If you ever need me, reach out. And he goes, this is going to reinforce my message. And it was a critical point in my business where I thought I wasn't sure if I could do it. And that giving spirit really turned it around. And it was really a turning point for me. So I thank you both for that. Paul, over to you. Any questions from your side? I think you're on mute, Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, I had gone on mute there for a minute. Just question for you, Bob. What are you doing nowadays? I know you've written a couple other books. What are you up to, and how are you using, the Go-Giver in your business today?
Well, I've cut down my speaking quite a bit. I'll be 65 later this month, and I still love speaking, but I never really liked the travel. But it was something you kind of have to do. I noticed the conventions never came to me. I was going to go to that. And so, so I'm doing my goal now is 10 to 12. Last year I did 11. My goal is 10 to 12, what I call airplane engagements, a year. Other than that, my business partner, Kathy Tajanel, and I have a Go-Giver community. We have what we call the Go-Giver Success Alliance, which is a weekly Zoom call with a group of very, very successful people who we all communicate, strategize, problem solve with, and it's a lot of fun. We also hold an event every few months right here in Jupiter, Florida. So I love that, at a local hotel, called the Go-Giver Entrepreneurs Academy Beyond the Mastermind. So that's a lot, and that's just a group of 8 people plus Kathy and me and 2 of our certified Go-Giver speakers who serve as guest master coaches. And those are 2 days of just real intense kind of getting into people's business and helping take to the next level. So really those are, that's really what I'm doing now, and just enjoying life.
Fantastic.
Good. No, thanks for
Mark,
sharing
what about
that.
you?
I continue to speak. I'm not in the process of writing any new books. I'm doing a lot of work around the 20th anniversary of the Fred Factor, which I'm very gratified continues, as Bob's books do, to sell through, which is, writing a book is easy, selling a book is hard. And when people buy a book, you're just, giddy with happiness and joy. Like I said, I'm doing some new things. I read a quote the other day. One of the things that I've always had, at least in the back of my mind, if not in the front of my mind, is this whole idea of greater purpose, because we can go through life doing a lot of things and get to the end and go, I did a lot of things, but why? What was the greater purpose? And a friend called me, a guy, I won't share his name because for obvious reasons, but he called me and Bob knows him and says, I'm in my 50s and I still haven't found my purpose in life. What do I do? And I said, well, until you find your purpose in life, do everything with purpose. And what I meant about that is, if you can't find this overarching, whether it's a faith-based purpose or a humanitarian purpose, whatever it might be, just bring purpose to each of the important things you do every day.
Yeah.
And then I read a quote just recently that reinforced it. If I had read the quote earlier, I'd have thought it was a rhetorical loop. It said, the purpose of life is a life of purpose. And I think that means not just having a purpose, but living purposefully. And I think we make it sometimes kind of hard when we get, at 30,000 feet. Maybe we need to start at ground level. And so I'm trying to do some things. I have a 3-way test. One is do I want to do it? Number 2 is am I good at doing it? And number 3, will it be profitable? And by profitable, I don't just mean will it pay well, although I'm like Bob, I'm a capitalist and I'm all for that. But will it be profitable in terms of, well, I feel good about it. Well, I
Exactly.
feel like, you know what, this was a good investment of time. And when I use that three-way test, I see that, speaking, and I've loved it, continue to love it, is a medium, one of many mediums to influence. And so I do some selective, I don't coach. I don't have the coaching skill set. I mean, if that's Freudian, coaching skill set. But what I do have is, I think, the ability to counsel and advise, which is a little different. I also work with a very few speakers and executives that really want to up their game in terms of their presentation impact. So that's kind of a potpourri of things, but it keeps me very happy and very busy. And of course, I'm delightful to have my wife Darla and my sons. My oldest son Hunter's a marine aviator. My youngest son is a realtor, and that's a source of great joy in my life.
Fantastic.
That is so cool.
No,
I've got to bring this up because, throughout the years, and I've shared with Mark some of the things he said from stage that I've really taken to heart, and that's made a big difference for me. But one of the things he just said just now, I thought was just brilliant. And that is, and I hope I'm repeating it correctly, but if not, Mark will hopefully correct. And when he said, if you haven't found your purpose, do everything purposefully or with purpose. I think that you said purposefully.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, because not everybody has found their purpose, and not everyone's going to necessarily find it at a young age or middle age or whatever. And yet we can do everything purposefully, right? We can put our heart and soul into everything we're doing, even if we don't necessarily know what that end purpose. And we're much more likely not only to add value when we do that, we're much more likely to find our purpose.
Yeah,
doing that.
exactly.
Absolutely.
So,
and if anyone wants to ask questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them. And it made me think of one of my favorite authors, Wayne Dyer. So he said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And similar to Mark, it felt like it was something that it was just a play on words, but it does connect back to your original comments on Fred. And just every single day, do the very, very best and make that choice to be the best. So, Paul, I think I do want to go back to the public speaking, right? A lot of our audience is fantastic technicians. They want to learn to be great storytellers or presenters. What's one piece of advice from each of you to be that?
Well, let me start because it's top of mind. Two things, really. One is the key, in my opinion, to great public speaking is the decidedly unsexy concept of preparation. Number one reason why people fail is they think it's going to be easier than it is. They don't think through, they don't practice, they don't prepare, and then as a result, they don't succeed. Preparation is the hard work of speaking. The other thing is, and I just met with someone last night who's trying to trying to move from an employee speaking position to more of a professional speaking position. And he said, can you help me with my presentation? And I said, I can, but what I can help you with, it's more important right now than your presentation is your position. Because that's, a lot of people give speeches, but nobody knows what position they're coming from. In other words, they don't have a unifying theme. They can't answer the question, what do you talk about? Well, I talk about everything, right? And then the second is your platform. And your platform isn't just, as we each have in social media and a brand, the people who know us, but your platform should be the people you want to know you as well. Think of it as your existing platform and your target platform. And once you have your position, your platform, then the presentation, it's not easier, but it's more powerful because everything is congruent and it's turning that flywheel of success. So preparation is the most important thing, but don't start with presentation. Start with position, then platform, then presentation.
Amazing.
Wonderful.
Bob, what do you think?
Two things. One, preparation, and really, I've heard so many people who, when they talked about wanting to become a speaker, just saying, well, I don't have to have a speech thought out. I go up there and just speak from my heart. And my question is usually, have you ever been to a play, a Broadway play, or a play at your local theater, or your, that was really, really good? And I said, well, yeah, sure, of course. So how often do you think those magnificent actors are up there winging it every night, just speaking from their heart? And of course, the answer is never. They said that Yul Brynner, who did thousands of performances as the king of Siam, they said he didn't play the king, he was the king, right? I mean, he was authentically the king of Siam. But why? Because he learned his lines. He knew, he prepared, he knew. So I think that's very, very important. The other thing is that as a speaker, and I totally fell victim to this temptation, and that is to think it's about you while you're up there. And, it's not. It's about the audience. And the moment we start focusing on the audience, that's when our presentation becomes a lot better, because it connects with them. So I think those points are very key.
Fantastic. Paul, how about you wrap it up? I know we've taken 30 minutes of Bob and Mark's time, and we really appreciate it.
Thank both of you. And I love the presentation thing. And Bob, I had one where you said the practice. I still remember I had a presentation in grad school that I probably spent 10, 12 hours for a 20-minute presentation practicing. I mean, I had down where I was going to stand, the words, where I was going to point to, what fingers to hold. And the dean of the school afterwards was like, if we can't get our presenter, we'll have you come speak sometime. I mean, it went perfect. Fast forward to 10 years later, and I had done all this analysis, worked with the general manager, my boss, the CFO. We went to present to the CFO, and I was winging it. We got about 10 minutes in, and he's like, this is a terrible idea. And everybody else had signed off on it. And he calls in the general manager. General manager talks to him for 5 minutes. He signs off on it. Later on, I asked my boss what happened. He goes, your analysis was brilliant, but your presentation lacked. And it was just a reminder that if you don't do that last part, you don't put in the work, the rest of it gets wasted.
Wow.
And it just a juxtaposition of just how important that practice is.
Great lesson.
So, I just want to say that, but we'll close here with just saying thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us for a few minutes. We hope, the audience got some benefit from it. I know I got a lot, and I'm sure they did. So let's give each of you an opportunity to say any parting words, and maybe we'll give you, Mark, the first shot there, and we'll give Bob the last word.
Well, I'll use something I learned from Lou Heckler years ago, circular construction, which says, come back to where you began. And that is, it sounds a little grandiose, but sometimes we downplay it and we shouldn't. Nobody can prevent us from choosing to be extraordinary. We don't always get what we don't always get the breaks we'd like, or the circumstances we desire. But more often than not, we succeed not because of, but despite setbacks and despite challenges. Bob has been a friend. One of the great things about this profession is a lot of friends that I started in the business with 30 or 40 years ago are still dear friends today. And Bob is one of them. Not all of them, but one of the, it's a short list. I mean, the older you get, the more you realize. A friend of mine once said, he's in his 60s too. Bob, you're I think 3 months older than me. So you're always going to be older than me. But one of my friends said, I'm at the age I don't need any more friends. I just want to take care of the ones I already got. And I thought that was so profound. But I appreciate Bob, and thank both of you for making this happen and bringing us together.
Thanks. I love you mentioning sweet Lou Heckler, who is one of the all-time greats. Wonderful guy. I guess mine is something I learned from a mentor. Gosh, probably 40 years ago, after I'd been in sales for just a little bit. And he said to me, Burg, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward. And that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And I think that when we approach sales from that foundational premise, I think then we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Fantastic.
Great advice. Well, thank you to both of you. We'll go ahead and close this now, but we really appreciate your time today, Bob and Mark. Can't thank you enough for carving out 30 minutes for us and our audience. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Honored. Thank you.
All right, Paul, what did you think of that?
I thought it